The cafe was unusually crowded that chilly morning. The air carried the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and buttery pastries straight out of the oven, while a warm rhythm. At the corner table, however, sat a man who seemed out of place in the cozy chaos. Adrian Kane. Sharp jawline, perfectly tailored suit, wristwatch worth more than most customers' yearly salaries, exuded an aura that made people lower their voices as they passed. To the world, he was untouchable. A self-made millionaire, a CEO who had built an empire spanning luxury hotels, high-end real estate, and cutting-edge tech ventures. He was power, prestige, and perfection personified. But this morning, none of that mattered. Across from him, in a sleek baby stroller, his infant daughter, Lily, was in the throes of a relentless crying fit. Her little fists flailed, her cheeks flushed red, her tiny lungs proving stronger than any boardroom opposition Adrian had ever faced. He tried everything in his arsenal, rocking the stroller gently, whispering soothing words, offering the bottle he always carried, but nothing worked. The more he tried, the louder Lily wailed, as if mocking his helplessness. Heads began to turn. A couple near the window sighed in irritation. A student with headphones shot an annoyed glance over her laptop. A mother with her own toddler gave a sympathetic, yet pitying smile. Adrian's grip tightened on the bottle. He could close billion-dollar deals in rooms filled with cutthroat competitors, yet here he was, reduced to desperation by an 8-month-old baby. "Please, Lily," he muttered under his breath, bouncing her lightly in his arms now. "Just give me a break." Nothing. The sound of her cries filled every corner of the cafe, and Adrian's patience thinned. He wasn't used to failing. Not in business, not in life. Yet here, with his daughter, he felt powerless. The helplessness cut deeper because Lily was all he had left of his late wife, the only person who had ever seen him not as the CEO, but as a man. And then came a voice. Soft, hesitant. "Excuse me, sir, may I?" Adrian's head snapped up. Standing before him was a waitress, her apron faded, her hair tied in a messy bun, and exhaustion shadowing her young face. She looked fragile, ordinary. But her eyes, gentle, sincere, rested on Lily with unexpected tenderness. Adrian hesitated, pride warring with desperation. But Lily's cries grew louder, echoing like an accusation. Finally, with a reluctant nod, he allowed the stranger to take his daughter into her arms. Adil's heart pounded as he stared at Shahina, unable to process the weight of her proposal. His entire life had been a battle for survival, and here was a woman offering him stability, comfort, and perhaps even a chance to focus on his dreams. Yet the thought of marrying someone nearly 50 years older filled him with confusion. That night, he walked home with a storm in his mind. He thought of his late mother, of the countless nights she had prayed for his future. Would she have wanted him to accept this? Or would she have told him to preserve his dignity? Sleep never came. Only questions, doubts, and the image of Shahina's steady eyes. The decision was made sooner than he expected. Within days, the marriage took place quietly, but word spread like wildfire. Newspapers splashed the story across headlines. Poor student marries 71-year-old millionaire widow. Social media mocked him mercilessly. Old friends sneered and called him a gold digger. His professors whispered in the hallways, and strangers pointed at him in public. Adil's world turned cold overnight. Even his family, though hesitant to criticize openly, struggled to understand. But through it all, Shahina remained calm. She held his hand firmly, reminding him that the world's judgment was fleeting. "They don't know your heart, Adil," she told him softly. Let them talk. Life in her mansion was nothing like the cramped room he had left behind. He woke up in a bed larger than his entire apartment, dined on meals prepared by chefs, and wore clothes finer than he had ever touched. But the comfort only deepened his unease. He hadn't married for money, at least not entirely, yet every luxury reminded him of what others said about him. Shahina, however, treated him with surprising kindness. She encouraged his studies, asked about his sketches, and even offered to sponsor his dream of becoming an architect. At times, he wondered if perhaps she truly saw something in him no one else did. On the 7th day of their marriage, Shahina surprised him. Early in the morning, she handed him a small, old-fashioned key and asked him to follow her. They walked through silent corridors until they reached a heavy wooden door he had never noticed before. This is something I've kept hidden for years, she said, her voice trembling. She placed the key in his palm. It belongs to you now. When Adil unlocked the door and stepped inside, he froze. His breath caught in his throat as he stared at the walls covered with photographs, documents, and files, all about him. His childhood, his struggles, even secrets no one else knew. It was as if she had been watching him his entire life. Adil's fingers trembled as he reached for the nearest photograph pinned to the wall. It was him, at the age of 7, walking barefoot to school. Shoulder. He had no memory of anyone taking that picture. His eyes darted across the room. More photos, some from his teenage years, others from his university days. There were newspaper clippings about local scholarships, copies of his father's old shop receipts, and even hospital documents from his mother's final illness. His heart pounded violently. How could Shahina possibly have all of this? Who was she really to him? He turned sharply, his voice breaking. Why? Why do you have all this? Were you following me, watching me like a stranger? Fear mixed with anger in his chest, a storm he couldn't contain. He had entered this marriage unsure of her intentions, but now he wondered if he had stepped into something far darker. Shahina's eyes welled with tears. Slowly, she walked toward him, her hands trembling as she reached out. Adil, please listen before you judge me. Her voice cracked with emotion. Years ago, I met your mother. I was newly widowed then, lost and drowning in grief. No one cared about me except your mother, a poor woman who had nothing, yet offered me tea and comfort on the street when I was crying alone. I never forgot her kindness. Adil froze. His mother, he tried to recall, and faintly, he remembered his mother once mentioning a wealthy lady with sad eyes she had helped many years ago. Could it be her? Shahina continued, her voice firm but tender. When she passed, I promised myself that I would look after you. I began following your life, not to control you, but to protect you. Those scholarships you thought were random, I arranged them. That cafe job you found just in time, I made sure the position was open. Everything you thought was luck was me, watching from a distance. Adil's chest tightened. The room that had first felt like a shrine of obsession now seemed more like a sanctuary of hidden care. Yet confusion still gnawed at him. But why marry me, Shahina? If you saw me as a son, why this? Her eyes dropped, heavy with unspoken truths. Because the world wouldn't let me bring you close in any other way. I couldn't bear to see you struggle alone any longer. This was the only way I could keep my promise to your mother, and to myself. Adil's breath caught in his throat, torn between disbelief and an aching sense of destiny. Adil staggered back a step, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. The room seemed to close in on him, the walls lined with his life's history pressing against his chest. He didn't know whether to feel gratitude, fear, or betrayal. All along, he had believed his survival depended on own perseverance, yet here stood a woman who revealed that she had quietly shaped his path. His voice shook as he whispered, so all this time, my life wasn't my own. Shahina's lips quivered, she shook her head firmly. No, Adil, your strength was always yours. I only opened doors when they were closed too tightly. Every choice you made, every late night of study, every sacrifice, you did that. I only kept watch, to make sure you didn't break under the weight of the world. Adil sank into a nearby chair, running his hands through his hair. The truth weighed heavily. The people mocking him, the cruel headlines, the whispers, they thought he married for money. And now he learned it wasn't money that had bound him to Shahina, but a promise his mother had unknowingly left behind. The thought of his late mother's kindness rippled through him like a wave. She had once told him, one act of kindness can return in ways you can't imagine. Now, he understood. Yet another question burned inside him. He looked up at Shahina, his eyes narrowed in confusion. But why marriage? Why not adopt me, help me openly, or tell me the truth before? Her face softened, but her answer cut deep. Because, my child, people would never understand. If I had adopted you, society would still sneer, accuse you of chasing my wealth, and tear your dignity apart. If I had only supported you, you might have rejected me out of pride. Marriage was the only way I could stay close without question. And, I was selfish. After years of loneliness, I longed for companionship too. I hoped maybe you could find it in your heart to see me beyond my age. Silence filled the air. Adil's heart twisted. Part of him wanted to run, to escape this web of secrets. Another part felt a deep, inexplicable bond forming, one born of his mother's kindness, Shahina's sacrifices, and fate itself. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just living a scandal. He was standing at a crossroad between resentment and acceptance, between shame and destiny. He looked at her, his throat tight. I don't know what to feel. But I know one thing, this changes everything.